Hi, I'm Vienna Teng, and this is...
I'm Alex Wong.
Well, okay, the new album is called Inland Territory. First of all, congratulations on the release of the new album. For those who have not had a chance to hear this album or any of your other previous three albums, how would you describe this album? How, in a way, would you say it's kind of different from the last three records?
This one is the most mixtape kind of album that I've made so far. I think this one definitely was one in which I wrote the songs and realized that they were kind of going in all these different directions. And so we kind of had a choice of, making them, trying to force them to all be like one cohesive sounding mood album somehow, or to just honor what each one wanted to be. And definitely in asking Alex to produce it, it definitely went in the latter direction. So it's definitely an album where it's kind of chamber pop one song and maybe more rock the next, and more kind of folky, indie, kind of lo-fi stuff the next, and almost classical the next, and so it kind of goes all over the place.
That's interesting because one of the things I've read a lot of blogs and posts about people who have been anticipating the record, including a few fans who've ordered the record from Germany.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting.
It's really amazing.
Is that one person brought up the fact that it's a very deep album in terms of depth, and that's one of the things I've noticed that. Case in point, like the last Snowfall, there's like the sound of like a record popping and hissing at the beginning, almost like a fire. There's a marching drum sound to Antebellum, which I think is really, really cool. And was there more, and in a way, it's kind of like, in my mind, I could be wrong on this, that it's kind of how the live performances have become lately. Whereas a few years ago, I saw you guys here, and I believe you were playing a waterphone during Blue Caravan. I thought that was really, really cool. And so it was also more of a conscious effort with this record to make it kind of how the live performances have gotten, or it was just kind of like also experimentations within the studio confines, or...
It was a little bit of both. I mean, in the fact that we tour together, I think we both kind of brought to the album the sensibility of what we already do live, like kind of the sounds that we were creating. Obviously, we weren't trying to do something that would sound like a live record, but kind of with a similar...
Maybe the same thought process behind how the live arrangements were being approached. We kind of used the same ideas of colors and textures on the record. I think the live show we try to think in terms of what's a cool way to emphasize this dynamic here, or a cool color to put here. And I think that we ended up doing a lot of that with the record as well, just with a lot more options.
And also, I think in writing the album, I was writing a lot more with a live show in mind, actually. Because personally, even though I do naturally write a lot of slow, contemplative, acoustic songs, if I go and see a show of that, I tend to get bored after a while. So I think when I was writing, I instinctively was trying to come up with stuff that was, a real variety of stuff. And so we wanted an album that kind of would keep someone's attention the same way a really varied live show would.
Very cool. It's funny also when we're talking about the variations of songs, and also I was watching an EPK where you brought up that every song kind of has its own like home within the record and all. I found it interesting personally that as you're talking about the different types of sounds within the record, you have a song In Another Life which has kind of like this old time, almost ragtime feel to the song. And oddly enough, afterwards, this Follow a Grandmother song, which itself has kind of like this almost old-timey folk country sound to it. And what's interesting is that both the songs have kind of a theme of like past experiences, marriage, tradition, and within different verses of the song. Was it intentional to go more with a vintage sound towards those particular songs because of the subject matter? Or did you end up having these lyrics for it, and you thought that this would be more of a feeling that would evoke this particular type of emotion if you were to hear this song?
That's a really good question. I would definitely say that the meanings of the song, I know that when Alex is producing albums, he definitely thinks about what the song is about and what it wants to say, and then kind of constructs the atmosphere of it around that.
I think production to me, is a songwriting tool.
Yeah.
So I try to use it in terms of how to forward the idea of the song, or how to really make the lyrics more impactful. So that you can even hear the music and kind of get a sense already of the setting of what the song is about, or what the emotional content is going to be.
And he also had the idea of recording some of this stuff outside of a recording studio.
Oh.
So those songs, In Another Life and Grandmother Song, he said should be recorded in a Victorian house, and so you definitely do get that kind of old parlor feeling, like not only the woodwind arrangement and all the people clapping and stomping, but also just kind of the history of the room that we were in kind of informed the performances, I think, which is really fun.
Okay. Also, I read right around when you started writing the record that you made the move from California to New York, which I believe you also did a chronicle, like a little short film of it on your YouTube page as well.
Right.
Did the move have any influence on the new albums in terms of songwriting or performing, and what brought about the move?
It definitely affected both the writing and performing a lot. It's actually kind of hard to describe exactly how. I mean, my flippant answer is that a lot of songs got a lot faster. And that has to do with, I think, the speed and the energy of life in New York. But a lot of it was also, spending a lot of time with, like Alex and his friends, who are playing in these different projects around New York City, and just getting exposed to a lot of different kinds of music. Like, you could be playing a show in one little club in Manhattan and then walk next door and get a completely different sound, and then walk a couple blocks over and somebody else would be performing some kind of, avant-garde, like sort of classically influenced piece. And so there's just all this input happening all the time. And so I think the eclecticism of the album has something to do with that, for sure.
I concur.
Fair enough. Also, while you're in New York, have you found yourself immersed in New York's great musical scene? I mean, New York is rich with history of a lot of rock music, a lot of pop music and all. Have you had time to take in any of the clubs, any just like jumping on stage, performing with someone just randomly or anything?
Yeah, well, definitely there are certain scenes, there are certain homes that you end up gravitating towards, and you get to know a lot of people within that community. So, I haven't gotten to know the punk scene all that well, or the hip-hop scene, or even the classical scene for that matter. But among singer-songwriters, there are a couple of small venues where everybody seems to congregate, like people who have made it really big, they'll try out new material in these places like Rockwood Music Hall and the Living Room, and places like that. And then also people, who just moved to the city and are trying to get their start, or, people kind of in the middle like us. It's really fun that there's a kind of great equalizer with these small clubs in New York, because there's a real attitude of, everybody's just here as musicians and we're all making stuff and sharing it, and it doesn't really matter how successful or how much of the beginning, of your career you are.
That's definitely one thing I noticed when I first moved to New York that impressed me the most was seeing people who I considered, famous musicians just sort of milling about, still researching, still seeing what's going on, who's up and coming, and kind of still out trying to glean ideas from the people doing it. And I never noticed that as much in my time living in like Los Angeles. I was there for a while, and I felt like once certain people had gotten past a certain threshold, they sort of went behind a curtain and sequestered themselves into another echelon of coolness or something.
Yeah.
But I think I like the work ethic of the artists in New York, where they realize that they still have to perfect their craft, even if they have had monetary success or they've had notoriety. They're still, they believe in bettering themselves as musicians, so they still go out and listen to the new people and